Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Hazem, a customer engineer at Soda, and today we'll be looking at how to catch data issues early in Databricks using Soda data contracts. Now, as usual, you can always drop your questions in the chat. We will make sure to answer those either during the session or afterwards. And the recording will be available to watch also on demand afterwards. And so the agenda for today. So the last webinar, we looked at onboarding a Databricks data source into the Soda Cloud and configuring profiling and anomaly detection and activating that in order to get some understanding of the patterns of our data automatically. And so in today's session, we'll kind of zoom in more onto the second part of that, where we start from the anomaly dashboard, right? Our metric monitors. We detect some anomalies there or identify some issues, regularities, things that don't look right. And from there, that would kind of give us a guiding point where we can actually start writing explicit data quality tests using Soda data contracts. Then we have a look at how we can enforce these data quality contracts within our Databricks notebooks. And then finally, shifting left in our pipelines, so moving into testing into earlier stages of our pipelines in order to be more proactive, catch issues early and prevent them from affecting our downstream assets by implementing circuit breakers. So yeah, let's get started. And so here is my retail order table. Right now, yeah, I had onboarded the data source and backfilled it, so I'm immediately getting the metrics based on the history of my data. And so taking a quick look here, it seems that most metrics seem to be doing fine. But I see that, yeah, at my most recent timestamp, we seem to be having some issues here. And so I can extend the view, right, to get more of my history. And I can see that, right, for this specific table, it's being triggered to my pipeline that's at a schedule. So I'm expecting normally that the most recent timestamp should kind of fall into the same ranges at a daily partition, right? But it seems that at some points, the pipeline is actually executing earlier, and then more recently, there's been taking very long. So that's already a first issue that we notice and we might want to test for here. If we go back and go down a bit further, we can see that we have set up a few column monitors, right? So some averages, so timestamp monitors and missing values monitors as well, which actually, based on the trend that we see actually from the graph, it seems that these monitors also do have anomalies. So there's actually we do have irregularities within this table that we should write more explicit tests for. So again, look at another graph at the order ID, missing values percentage. Scroll back in the history. So it seems that every month or so, we have a day that seems to be having quite a bit of missing values on our data, around 5%. But then again, recently, that value has jumped where we had one day with almost a third of our rows inserted essentially have a missing order ID, which is highly undesirable, of course. And so we know now that we should write a test as well for this order ID, right? We know that we have the recent timestamp issues, and we know that, yeah, we have some averages also with our quantity and prices that look irregular. And so what I'm going to do now is I'll hop into the contracts page, right, and go through some of the columns and begin adding some checks or looking at some of the checks and the syntax of a data contract. So here you have your checks page, right, next to the metric monitors page, where you're now are able to kind of get an overview of your checks on the dataset level, right? So everything, row count, schema, validation, freshness, etc. But then also your column checks. So you'll be able to see your columns, right, which will be automatically populated from our discovery, our data source discovery. And then you'll be able to see all the defined checks per column and also their past running evaluations. If we look at the top right here, we'll have our edit contract button. And doing so, clicking here will actually then open our contract, right? Our data contract in a no-code format where we can begin writing our first checks. And so you can see the contract is kind of split into three parts here. We'll begin by some general contract configurations, right? Then your data set level checks, and then you have your columns where you can actually start defining checks per column. And so just to look a bit at the structure of the contract. So at the beginning, you can add filters, right? So these can really, these filters will be invoked at the whole contract level. So essentially kind of like you can do like a daily partition, right? So that you're only scanning the data of a relevant day instead of the entire table every time. Of course, you can also add filters for specific checks, but this is more if you want to apply a single filter across your whole contract. Next, we have variables. So variables, we can kind of configure also dynamically within your contract, and you can optionally give them default values, right, which will be used by default, as the name suggests, or you can actually also pass these variable or give them values at runtime. So let's say, for example, invoking this through a pipeline, I can pass a parameter that declares this timestamp to be a different value from the default. But let's have a look a bit at how this variable is defined here. So this variable here that I've referred to as timestamp, I've given it this default value here. Now this is a default value that is provided by Soda, this soda.now variable. This will actually be automatically provide the current timestamp, which you can then perform further calculations with. So this variable here is essentially kind of setting a timestamp of the past day, which you can actually use then in our filter, for example. So if I would have wanted to apply that on my created that filter, and then I can reference in the same format that is referenced here, the var.timestamp, which then will apply this kind of daily partition filter on all my contract runs. Next, we can configure a schedule, right? So the schedules are now configured per contract. So each contract, you can kind of give it a frequency at which it executes along with its time zones and variable overrides. Now, for the purpose of this session, I'm going to be executing my contracts through pipelines as I want to test the data as early as possible, as soon as I finish the tasks at each of my layers. And so I won't really necessarily be needing a schedule in for this case here. Next, we can then configure our dataset checks, right? So in this case here, we have our row count check, schema validation, and a data freshness check, which we use on the column where we were having issues earlier, right? We were having the timestamp issues. And we can then also define our thresholds for the checks. So I'm going to add another check here for duplicate check. Give it a name. And here I can actually select a couple of columns. So I'm going to select all my ID columns to check for duplicates, essentially. And then the threshold, so the count must be 0, right? And not adding any filters here. Similarly, we can do the same for order ID, right? So we have the column that we noticed we had some missing values. So here I'm just going to add a missing check, give it a name, right? I can also then define some missing values, right? So by default, Soda will scan for any null values of this column, but I can also supply extra values that that Soda should actually consider also as null values. And so I'll pass, yeah, some extra values here that I know usually indicate that this data point is missing. Again, I'll define here my threshold to be 0, and that is now a part of my contract. You can also do different kinds of checks, right? So you can also do, for example, reference checks here, where we're actually referencing an entirely different data set. So here we're using a qualified name of a product catalog data set, and we're verifying, or we're referencing the column ID in that table to kind of make sure that all the product IDs in our orders table are also existing in our product catalog table. Can also do, yeah, validity, normal validity checks, right? So normal regex, formex checks, where you can actually now also give a name or a label to your regex expression, which will help other users who are kind of collaborating with your contract to kind of understand what this is. And yeah, finally, we can also do some custom SQL checks, right? So we can here again also do joins on tables. And so this example here, a bit similar to the referential checks, we join on a customer table and we make sure that all of our customer IDs exist also in the customer table. And so as we're writing checks here, right, through the no-code UI, in the background, these are being translated into our SOTA contracts language. So when we press the button here, we're able to kind of see what is actually being authored or executed in the back. And so as you edit stuff from the no-code interface, this gets applied into the YAML format schema. And as you apply also more checks into the YAML format, this gets reflected into the no-code UI. And so now you basically have a unified single source of truth where basically all the stakeholders of a data asset, consumers and producers, can collaborate on a single source of truth in order to define the data quality standard of this data asset, which can then be taken to be enforced at different areas wherever needed. And so the idea here, or the model, would be that each contract has each table has a single contract, which you are then enforcing at once. And so now once I've added some checks here, right, into my contract, I can test those checks to see what the outcome would be. And then I could directly publish this, which then you can see now we've added a duplicate check and a missing check in our contract. So this is now living in the SOTA cloud, right? Now what we can do is we can now come to our Databricks notebooks and make sure that we are programmatically verifying or enforcing this data contracts so that we can kind of fit that also within our pipelines or jobs. And so here we have a Databricks notebook, and where we install the SOTA library, right, for the SOTA Databricks. And here we can use the CLI to actually verify our data contract. And so we use the SOTA contract verify command. And here the parameters I would need to pass are data set, right? So the fully qualified name of the table that I was authoring the contract on. And then a SOTA Cloud YAML file, which actually contains our SOTA Cloud API keys, right? So just to show here, so it'll be normally in this format containing the host, the API key, and secret, which you can very easily generate from your SOTA Cloud account. So since our data source configuration is already onboarded with our SOTA agent in the cloud, our contract is already also living in the cloud, then simply with my dataset name and SOTA Cloud credentials, I can then trigger the contract either with the agent, with the use agent flag, or I can just remove that use agent flag in order to run it locally. And then finally, as mentioned before, so we had the variables you can set dynamically. so that you can do actually through the set command, where you can set, for example, then timestamp to be equal a specific value, right? Which would then be the value that is passed for this specific scan. So if I quickly run that here, so yeah, then we see here it's fetching contract from Soda Cloud. We'll start fetching the data source configuration from Soda Cloud. And then the scan will begin executing with the agent until it gets to the appropriate status, which you can then validate directly in the cloud and visualize. And so similarly, we can also do this for shifting left, right? So we let's say we have like a raw events table, right? That is going into a staging area before that it's transformed into the retail orders table. And so I'm noticing, yeah, things are quite messy here, right? I have a lot of issues in this table. And so I want to actually go to the source and make sure that I'm preventing these issues from happening in the first place. And I'm actually addressing them as soon as possible, as it takes quite some time when it gets to this layer to be able to kind of backtrack and troubleshoot, resolve all the rows. And so here, again, we have another notebook where this time we can actually push essentially a contract or onboard a data source through the CLI. And so this time is different. So here we now have also a data source YAML file, right? So previously in our previous run, this was already on the agent, but now we are running this locally. So we are using this data source YAML file. And then we also have a contract file. So I've already prepared this beforehand, just a contract with some simple checks that can be also applied to the raw events table. And so now to look at the CLI, so then here you can you do this auto contract verify command again. You can then now specify your data source, which is the data source YAML file, the Soda Cloud YAML file, right, which contains the API keys, and then the contract file for the staging layer. And then finally, we use this publish command, which actually will push this contract into Soda Cloud, right? So opposite kind of how we did it previously by fetching the contract and executing that, this will push the contract back to Soda Cloud. And so we can go back to Soda Cloud here. We'll see our raw orders events table, and we can see here all the checks that were authored, both in the no-code format and in the YAML format. And so again, I will not put this at a schedule, right? Because I'm intending to execute this from the pipelines, right? So what I will do then is bring this into my ETL jobs. So to have an example here, so we have like a simple ETL task, right? We're loading this raw data into our staging area before it's transformed and then put into production. And so at each stage now, now that I've created a contract at the gold layer and at the silver layer, I can run my Soda checks or my Soda contracts programmatically after each task or within each task, and then implement circuit breakers in order to then prevent any further jobs from executing. And so you see here that, for example, the staging Soda checks had failed quite a few times, right? To go to one of the runs, you can see that, the Soda data quality checks have failed here, right? You have some failures in your logs as well. And so the downstream assets would then not be impacted, pipeline would kill, and all the alerting, depending on your configuration, would fire in order to trigger the remediation flow or the resolution flow for your data. So just quickly recap, we've seen how to start from an anomaly dashboard to identify some irregularities to our data, seen how to write our first checks into a data contract, and then enforce that within our Databricks notebook using only the Soda Cloud credentials. And then we've also seen how to push new contracts from the CLI, right, and be able to shift left and enforce your data quality standards as early as possible in your pipeline. Now, of course, you can write your questions in the chat, right? And we'll be happy to take those. But in the meantime, I hope you managed to learn a bit about contracts. And if you're interested in trying it out a bit further, you can sign up for early access with our QR code here. And if you're interested in knowing more about how Soda can help you and your teams build trust in your data, then please don't hesitate to speak to a Soda data quality expert, and we can help you there. Thank you all. Yeah, this session will be recorded and will be available on demand for later viewing. So, see some questions here. Yeah, how granular should contracts be? Table level or column level? Well, it can be both really. It should be both actually. Your contract here is it's applicable for the entire table, right? And everything that lies within. So this like we've looked here, you have right your configurations, but then you have your table level checks, right? And then you have everything that is defined at a column level. So yeah. So I have another question here. Can SOTA data contracts integrate directly with the source systems schema definitions to proactively detect breaking changes before the data is ingested? Or can they be only be enforced once the data is in Databricks pipeline? Well, this depends here on the source system, but what is possible also is that you can actually well, you can run data quality checks on raw unstructured data actually, so like CSV files, Parquet files, JSON files, and so on. And we do that kind of by leveraging data frame connectors, right? So something like Spark, Dask, or Pandas, in order to kind of bring that data into data frames, be able to then validate your contract on top of that, and then only once that verification passes, you can then proceed with the ingestion stage. We have another question. So what are the best practices for surfacing SOTA contract violations within Databricks dashboards or external tools like Tableau? So yeah, that's a good question. So automatically, right, as you can see, your data quality results and history is available for visualization in the SOTA Cloud dashboard. All of this information is also available in our APIs, right? So we have our Cloud and Reporting APIs, which can you can easily extract, right, all of this reporting layer of information, which you can then bring into your own warehouse and visualize kind of in your own external BI tools. Maybe I can quickly bring an example of that. Right. So yeah, so this is an example in Power BI, right? So this kind of yeah, how you can extract that data into your own warehouse and then just run your visualization queries on top of it. Another question, is it possible to set up alerting on Slack when a contract fails? Yes, so indeed we do have Slack integrations out of the box, right? So you can easily set that up in your organization settings, right? You'll see integrations here, and you'll be able to kind of click the plus button, add an integration, right? You can have Slack and Microsoft Teams natively, but then you can also integrate with your own custom workflows through webhooks, right? And then once that would be configured, you can then kind of set your own notification rules, right? You can create, there's default rules based on ownership, right, of the data assets, but you can kind of customize your own rules here, which could apply to specific checks. And then you can also, yeah, kind of create conditions and create, like, you can then choose the channel, right? The Slack channel based on that. So yeah, you can here choose based on ownerships, on labels, on specific tags, and then normally your Slack integration will be available here, which you can then easily reroute to. Uh, does adopting SOTA Microsoft Purview make Microsoft Purview redundant, or would a hybrid approach make sense? You have customers using both. Yeah, so indeed, I think a hybrid, and we do see hybrid approaches oftentimes where SOTA is really used to just generate all of the data quality checks, right, and results. So really all the data health and scoring lies within SOTA, and then integrate with Microsoft Purview, where you can push all of those results and data into your data catalog to kind of enrich it with this data quality health and status, which you can then easily drill back into SOTA to get a more granular overview of where things went wrong specifically. Have another question. Large Databricks workspace, multi-team, who owns the SOTA contracts? So at SOTA, we take like a divide and conquer strategy. So we believe that data quality is a team sport. So it's actually yeah, the ownership should be shared right across the teams. So all the stakeholders of that data asset should have the responsibility to collaborate and enforce this data contract, right? And oftentimes, right, like the business users might have more context, right, business context on the data, and so they can write like more explicit tests, right? They'll understand better how the data looks like. Whereas the engineers, right, can then go and implement that within their pipelines, right, where they're wherever they are producing this data. Well, I think we have one more. When can we expect contracts to leave the beta stage? So our first release of the data contracts is planned for June 30th. So we hope you'll be using it then. All right. I think that's it for the questions. I don't see any more coming in. So once again, thank you everybody for tuning in. And yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be very happy to help and speak with you more about data quality and building trust in data. Bye bye.